We know what will happen in the future. Haven't climate change scientists been wrong in the past by a couple degrees centigrade? Does that not mean that they are not all knowing? Only God is all knowing.
Well, there's going to be a certain degree of heating, let's say by 2100. It's like, okay, some of that might be human generated. Some of it's a consequence of warming after the ice age. This has happened before, but fair enough. Let's take your presumption. Okay, now we're going to extend the climate model, so to speak, into the economic model. So I just did an analysis of a paper by Deloitte, Major League Consultants. They just produced a report in May. I wrote an article for it in the Telegraph, which I'm going to release this week. Said, well, if we get the climate problem under control economically, because that's where the models are now being generated on the economic front. So now we have to model the environment and we have to model the economy, and then we have to model their joint interaction. And then we have to predict 100 years into the future. And then we have to put a dollar value on that. And then we have to claim that we can do that, which we can't. And then this is our conclusion. We're going to go through a difficult period of privation, because if we don't accept limits to growth, there's going to be a catastrophe 50 years in the future or thereabouts. And so to avert that catastrophe, we are going to make people poorer. How much poorer? Well, not a lot compared to how much richer they're going to be, but definitely, and they say this in their own models, definitely poorer than they would be if we just left them the hell alone.
Wow, that's crazy, bro. And by the way, when they say people, they're talking about the GDP, or they're talking about the wealthiest corporation. It's not like you, the average fucking Joe, is going to be a hell of a lot poorer, because you're getting poorer regardless, while the economy is better than ever before. The United States economy continues to grow, and yet the social safety nets that you would normally have continue to shrink. So how does that work? Isn't everything much better now? Carbon prices would...
But the economy's good? What about the 2008 financial crisis, bro? What do you mean?
Raise global GDP by 3.5% according to IMF. This guy is just making shit up.
stocks?
Yeah, you already take
Those
pay
are
cuts
all
every year with
fake, man.
inflation.
Haven't you been
But corporate
watching
profit margins are
GME?
higher than ever before. So make that make sense. You are already becoming poorer.
Yeah.
So then I think,
That's
okay,
'cause it's all
poorer,
bullshit.
who? Well, let's look at it biologically. Got a hierarchy, right, of stability and
That's not
security.
economy
You
being
stress a
good.
hierarchy like that, a social hierarchy. So there's birds in a
The
environment,
economy's
and an avian
good?
flu comes in.
This guy's
And then you
saying
look at the
the
birds in the
economy's
social
good?
hierarchy, and the low-ranking
What
birds
the
have the worst
fuck?
nests. So they're most exposed to
The
wind and
economy's
sun and
not
farthest from
good.
food
Like, the
supplies.
economy's not good
Right.
globally, bro. Are you paying attention to what's going on in China with all the fake buildings that are being built, or fucking condos, and that whole system is like connected to our system, bro. Okay. Okay.
He always makes
Like, the economy's not good, bro.
analogies, and they almost always fucking fall short. Especially because, one, he's not a zoologist, but also, like, the animal kingdom is so fundamentally different, like, from animal to animal, species to species, and certainly
Yeah,
different
man,
than human
totally
beings,
not
which do have some
lobsters,
intrinsic
bro.
values that are so fundamentally different than the rest of the
Absolutely.
species that
I mean,
you could ever
we
talk
are
about. That, like,
like
even if you cast
99%
aside the
potato
obvious
anyway.
fallacy of appealing to nature, because the human condition is to overcome nature, it's the most human thing you can do. Even if you point it to, like, fucking, like, Jordan Peterson's insanely anti-trans narrative, it's like, if you were to turn around and talk about how natural it is to be trans by pointing to seahorses. It's like the
man,
seahorse.
that's a nice virtue signal right there.
The male seahorse, in the absence of a female seahorse being present, will shift and reorient its reproductive organs and become a female
Wonderful.
seahorse. There's nothing more inherently natural than being trans. Like, boom, there you go.
So they say when the aristocracy catches a cold, the working class
Okay.
dies of
Oh,
pneumonia. All right, so now we're going to
we're not lobsters. We're seahorses. We're a seahorse hierarchy.
make people poorer.
Okay, we're not
I also
lobsters.
do
We're
additionally know
seahorses,
some of the biggest
bro.
advocates of capitalism, unironically using one of the fundamental problems within the capitalist organization
We're
of the
not
economy.
fucking human social animals. We're fucking seahorses. I mean, in a way, I kind of believe that we're all one anyway. I mean, I think we're all potatoes, honestly. I don't think we're like, what is it, 99% DNA related to potato. We're not fucking seahorses, man. We're fucking potatoes, bro. We're all fucking just one potato. Okay, we're all white bread, bro.
As a reason for its continuation. That's always the best, where they're like, oh, well, when the aristocracy catches a cold, the working class suffer and die from pneumonia. Yeah, I wonder why that's the case. Okay, solve it, bitch. No, you can't. You must not. You must continue doing capitalism and more of it.
And so what the Deloitte consultants are
Yeah.
basically saying.
How can we continue doing capitalism, bro? How can we continue doing capitalism? Do we get people like Jordan Peterson to spout capitalism? No, you know what's even better? You know what's even better than getting Jordan Peterson to spout capitalism? You know what's this guy, Jordan Peterson? I mean, like, do you realize what Zizek said about him? Zizek said in the most amazing thing. I was there. I was at the debate. You know, I am fucking student of both Jordan Peterson and like an actual student of his psychology, at least, not his bullshit that he's saying right now, but his psychology is not so bad. He's a psychologist, clinical psychologist. He gives a meaning to people. That's his job. That's what Jordan Peterson does. And now, because of the void of meaning that the left, this presentation culture that the left has created, this virtue signaling culture that the left has created, this void of meaning that he's created, that's what this whole situation is about. That's why you exist, Hasan. Hasan, you exist because you're responding, you are inflating this Peterson issue. The whole the left had been inflating this Peterson issue because academia for the last 50 years has been slowly strangling out certain ways of thinking. That's why people like this Jordan, you know what Zizek said about him, right? Zizek said, and the best thing that you could say, he said, if we do live in a lobster hierarchy, he didn't refute the lobster hierarchy with the seahorse hierarchy. He said, if we do live in a lobster hierarchy, I wouldn't be debating you. If we lived in a meritocracy, I wouldn't be debating you. Like, that clip was actually, I think, taken out from the YouTube clip because the people who control the YouTube clip on the Jordan Peterson video, even though I was at the debate, right? I saw that. I remember that line. That wasn't, I don't remember that being, I remember that being cut out of the Jordan Peterson debate. I don't remember. If anyone can find it, that would be great for me. Thank you. Regardless, academia for the last 50 years has been strangling out points of view that do not agree with intersectionality. Okay, it's even gone into the philosophy departments, the highest realm, and they get himbos like you to repeat all this crap. Okay, so who created Jordan Peterson wasn't Peterson. Peterson had a field and he had a focus, but he was impeded upon by this intersectional ideology that kind of forced him to speak in a certain way, and that basically he became this like big deal. And then after Peterson, all of these people, these contrarians, these what the left calls edgelords. What the left calls edgelords, I mean, what is more free? Being an edgelord who can speak freely, authentically, or being someone that virtue signals? Are you free? Are you free? Okay, we have to be in when we're talking to each other as equals. We talk in the dirt. We don't talk in high up echelon of academic speak of like the correct way of engaging with one another and doing these socio-economic cost-benefit analyses of privilege that ironically creates rituals of capitalism in our social lives, in our emotional lives, rituals of capitalism that have invaded, and basically that is the invasion of the desert into our meaning creation. This is the stuff that Jordan Peterson talks about. And the reason why Jordan Peterson went back into the desert was because Zizek, Slavoj Zizek, showed him that whatever fantasies that Jordan Peterson created to get out of the desert of nothingness, just like whatever fantasies that anybody else is creating, we have to first see the desert of nothingness, and that is that capitalism has invaded our emotionality through progressive speak, through progressive psychoanalysis. Not psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis is what we need to fight this capitalist psychology. Read Psychology and Capitalism. Read Neoliberal Psychology. These books. These are important books. And then you get these straw man perspectives because we live in a society that restricts information, that restricts free speech. People, what they do is they create straw man versions of the side that they disagree with. And now that is the norm in our polarized echo chamber side. So Peterson is creating a straw man of the left and speaking outside of the professional realm of psychology that he has. He's become this and why has this all even happened? Okay, the whole reason why our emotions have been psychologized or capitalized is because the internet itself has been turned into capitalism. When the internet itself turns into capitalism, this is what Aaron Schwartz was arguing about. This is what Nina Paley was arguing about. The copyright is not theft, or the copying is not theft movement. This before Airbnb culture, we had couch surfing culture. That's what materialism means. That's what materialism means in my opinion, or should mean in communism. Materialism means that we take care of our material goods and we don't idealize this capital. We idealize capital, and that's why we have such crazy hierarchies. We live in a world that still believes in monarchy. So many Netherlands, England, Japan, all these places, they believe in heretical, emperorship or some sort of kingship. We live in that world, and in that world there are some other people that think that they can narcissistically go and socially construct within that world. Yes, social construction should be a thing, but you can't socially construct while not believing in a democratic way. The democratic way is how you need to create a social construction. And what does that mean? That means you need to incorporate even the farthest off reaches of the ideologies that you've never seen before, right? If you are, a certain color and you go to another tribe, another community, like, it's inevitable that there's going to be some there's going to be some ignorant kind of racism, which is different than a hatred kind of racism. At least let's differentiate between the ignorant racism, this wondrous racism, like this stereotype making because of non-conversation and non-communication, which is getting worse. Non-conversation is getting worse. What we need is people to ritualistically hang out with each other. And what we created instead is this polarization. Either you are with or against. There's no gray area anymore. And without that gray area, we can't create those rituals of connection. Our borders are becoming more tight. Okay, you must agree with whateverism. Okay, you have to agree with that. If you do not agree with that, right, white silence is violence. This is written on the wall in Toronto. White silence is violence. Are you fucking insane? White silence is violence? No, violence is not silence, my friend. Violence is an active measure. Okay, this silence, yes, there's some kinds of extended ideas of violence that we can talk about, but violence, we should be really clear what violence is. Violence is a very bad thing, right? So, I tell my students never to use the word bad or thing. It's very general, but this is a kind of capitalism that shuts out other ways of thinking. This is what I'm saying. That whatever we find is progressive today in the university, in what Hasan says, whatever we think that socialism is actually, 50 years of capitalism that is absolutely shutting out traditionalist ways of thinking. Traditionalist ways of thinking that are anti-capitalist. Those are, for example, the Christian tradition. The Christian monk tradition is anti-capitalist. Monks are anti-capitalist, right? I mean, there's a little bit of an anti-capitalism there. You can say a socialism version of Christianity, or you can even say, even in the right-wing version of Christianity, even there's a hint of anti-capitalism. Within the public sphere, there shouldn't be any capitalism there. There shouldn't be any people who are there just because they're there for notoriety or fame, or they're there because they are authentically engaging in political conversation. Yes, it does reek of idealism, and this is why excommunicated Hannah Arendt, the greatest thinker. This is why the progressive people have excommunicated Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt, I'm going to be doing on my channel a deep analysis of her work, along with the work of Leo Strauss. So keep in tune. But Hasan, you have described yourself as a himbo, so I'm going to describe you. You have also fallen for this phallic object known as Jordan Peterson. Who cares about Jordan Peterson? Who cares what he says? The only reason why we care what he says is because he's shut out from academia. If the dude was allowed to just be a fucking psychologist, okay, and say whatever his professional expertise was to say, okay, instead of the American Psychological Association coming into the field of psychology, transforming everything, forcing everything to be a certain way, intersectionality this, anti-racism that, they are forcing everyone to do something. If it wasn't like that, and then ironically, this commodification of emotional labor is capitalist, right? That's why it's even accepted within the academy, because it imposes rituals of capitalism. Okay, because out of a history of strangling people outside of academia, you create resentment. You create people like, what's this guy's name? The Justice Clarence Thomas. The guy's a fucking genius. Like, he fucking spent 40 years strategizing how to fuck people up, right? Like, that can only be created by strangling people outside of the democracy. You can't strangle people outside of the public sphere, at least in academia. Academia is supposed to be a public space, but what they've done is even the rituals in philosophy departments. The philosophy department is the highest department of all the fucking departments, supposedly. You know, if you're a philosophy person, then you know what I'm talking about. It's like an ironic thing. But regardless, even in that realm, they're putting down even the analytic philosophy people can't escape it, right? Even the most rigid positivistic people are like, what the fuck, and are towing the line. Why? Because affirmative action culture creates, socially reproduces itself. Okay, it's been socially reproducing itself for 50 years. Affirmative action culture. It socially reproduces itself. It gives itself the justifications that it needs for its own existence. Right. That whole social production is has within it the most powerful form of neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal colonialism of the mind that there is. And if you're interested in that, get off of Hasan's dick and get on mine. Peace.